it always strikes me in working on education how it's different from other development challenges in the sense that in some ways it's the key to all of them. You can't have, you know, improvement in poverty without education, and you can't really have improvement in sustainability without education. At the same time, the applications of internet technology, information technology really does make it kind of possible to do so much more than it's not just the resource constraints are really entirely different. And I wonder if each of you could kind of share a story of what brought you to work on this area and really makes it so compelling.
Well, I was involved in for-profit education for over 20 years. You want me to talk about my history, right?
Why this? Why education?
Okay, so I was involved in for-profit education for 20 years. Among other things, I started the first for-profit online university outside of the US in the Netherlands, in Europe, through partnership with the University of Liverpool, where we basically deliver their online degrees, very similar to other programs that now exist. It was the first one many years ago. While doing so, I realized how powerful online learning can be, because we had students from all over the world. We had students from Singapore who stayed with their families, kept their job, and still got this great European University of Liverpool education. The problem was that for most people, it was nothing but a wishful thinking. It was just too expensive. I ended up selling this business and the rest of my business and went into semi-retirement just to realize that it's not really for me and I want to go back. It was also clear to me that if I want to go back, I don't want to do more of the same, because I'm fortunate. By then I had enough. I sold all my business. And I wanted to do something that will have impact on the world. For me, the thing to make an impact on the world is education. Because if you think about it, if you educate one person, you can change life. But if you educate many, you can change the world. So I looked around and I realized that by then, all the ingredients that were needed to cut down the price of higher education were available and for free. Open source technology, open educational resources, content that professors produce and put online for the rest of the world to use for free, and the new internet culture of social networking where people share, teach, and learn from each other for free. All I had to do was to put it all together, so I did. And I created University of the People, which is a tuition-free online university. I can go on if you want me to.
Great place to leave it for there, yeah.
So my story is very simple. I got two $99 coupons in the mail while I was a student in Ithaca, New York, saying that you could go to Ecuador and come back for that little money. So I took advantage of that, went there, and ended up spending 2 years doing research in some Andean communities there on documentation of their medicinal plant knowledge with them. So it was a participatory research project. I was doing my PhD then. I pretty much stumbled upon a community, and they were willing to work with me on that. When we started documenting that knowledge, we of course confronted this whole issue of literacy big time. How do you represent their knowledge in ways that challenge is not there? So we had to come up with visual representations. So literacy was already playing on my mind. And then when I went back to the university and tried to started writing my dissertation, what do you do when you don't want to write your dissertation? You watch movies. And I did a lot of that, procrastination, right? So I used to watch Spanish films because I was in love with the language by then, and wanting to learn the language as well, perfect it. And then all these Spanish movies came with English language subtitles. This was the VHS tapes you might have heard of. And I wanted all those subtitles in Spanish. It was a no-brainer for me. I mean, I know enough Spanish, I could actually catch the dialogue if I just reinforced it a little bit. And then it was mostly a simple comment to my friends that, hey, why don't they just put Hindi subtitles on Hindi film songs, and why don't they put Tamil subtitles on Tamil film songs, and there are 22 official languages in India. Why don't they put same language subtitles on all film songs, and maybe India will become literate. This is literally having a conversation with friends in a living room as a student. And then when I actually started researching that, to my surprise, a simple idea like that had just not been tried anywhere in the world for literacy. I mean, that's so exciting for an academic. I actually made the transition from PhD to academia first. And then I started researching that. And it was just a pure academic research project, right, initially. So get your publications, get your tenure, and move on to another topic. But the idea itself had so much life and so much power in it that I just couldn't let go. So basically, I'm doing this because I just haven't been able to let go of it for 16 years.
As good a reason as any. My story actually goes back to when I was a kid, really young. Is anyone here from New Jersey? Hey guys. So I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. My parents run a nonprofit there that does urban redevelopment. And I spent the first 7 years of my educational career in the Trenton public school system, which was, depending on which numbers you look at, third worst in New Jersey, one of the top 25 worst in the country. It's a challenge system, and I was in 5th grade. I didn't realize it. I thought it was great. I had a lot of fun. But my parents started getting concerned that I was not being challenged by the fact that I never had any homework. I wonder why that would be. And so they started looking at other options and managed to find, really fortunately, a scholarship to a small private school in Princeton, New Jersey, Princeton Day School. And as I went through the rest of high school, I maintained contact with my friends in the Trenton system. I played sports with them, continued sort of interacting with them. They were my friends. And what I saw, especially in the latter half of high school, when people start looking at college, was that they had one guidance counselor for 900 students, and that guidance counselor spent half of their time thinking about domestic issues as opposed to college guidance. Whereas the kids at PDS, Princeton Day School, had 3 guidance counselors for 90 students. And they sort of held your hand through the entire process. And as a result of it, 25% of students in my high school ended up at a top 20 school, and almost everyone to a 4-year college. And in the Trenton system, the vast majority of students didn't graduate, and of the ones who did graduate, under half of them ended up going to a 4-year school of any sort. And my feeling as a college student, I ended up at Princeton, as a college student, looking at that disparity and wondering, like, what are the things that could be done to try to impact it? Was there's a massive divide in knowledge about the system, a massive divide in where admissions counselors or admissions officers from schools would visit, massive divide in terms of where information was being shared and how those students, especially in low-income schools, were gaining access about the admissions process and about higher education in general. They didn't know that a 1,200, back when I was in high school, it was, we didn't have 2,400 points in the SATs. So a 1,200 out of 1,600 back then, you know what? You probably weren't going to get into WashU from PDS, but you absolutely would have had a shot coming from a low-income school if you could show that you were academically capable of handling the work. And so my feeling as a sophomore in college was that to the extent that there was going to be some great equalizer, it would be access to information. Any data or access to education, any data that I'd seen showed that that was the single most impactful thing that you could do for someone. And to the extent that there was going to be access to educational information, the way that you were going to do that was the internet. It was the free distribution of sort of information through the internet that could allow students to gain access to that information and to have a much more level playing field. And so I started a company as an undergraduate at Princeton, which was essentially, it was called Zandigo. It was a social network around the admissions process for undergrads, and dove further into this process, really trying to help high school students better understand their options if they didn't come from an area where they had someone to walk them through the process. And so that ended up being used by about 100 schools and probably 100,000 students over a couple-year period. merged with a company called Zinch, which many of you guys may have interacted with at some point. And at that point, I was very deeply embroiled in this system and passionate about wanting to make an impact, and felt that we were at a point where, as Shai was saying, technology wasn't the issue preventing students from being able to achieve a great educational outcome online. It wasn't the medium, the internet, that was inherently creating suboptimal outcomes. It was a mix of other factors, some of them as simple as willpower, that we had the ability to impact as a society. And to do it well, it would require partnering with great institutions that did it really well already and finding ways to help them do that in the online medium. And that's kind of how it all came together.
Great. So do you guys catch that? He started when he was a sophomore in college. So upperclassmen, you're slacking. You got to get on this. Although there's probably many companies already been started by the people in this room. But so the two threads that I see in each of your stories, first of all, just the X factor that motivates every social entrepreneur. You see something out there you want to change, and in this case, it's lack of equity and access to education, and all of us who have had the ability to benefit from education, I think, can really sense that human right, as Shai says. But then the other common thread, of course, is the role of technology as a potential leveler, if we can only leverage it. And there's been a number of allusions already so far from each of you to the generational divide in technology, that there's, the pace of technological change is moving so quickly, and many things that were, commonplace 10 years ago are not seen at all today. I would like to ask you each to sort of project yourself forward a little bit and say, 5-10 years from now, what are going to be the fundamental game changers in education with the technologies that we have right now? Is it going to be augmented reality? Is it going to be wearables? Is it going to be new applications of mobile devices? Is it going to be simply, greater use of broadband? I mean, where do you see the real potential for change in education? I'll start with you.
I think there are a handful of areas that we're going to see massive shifts over the next few years. One of them is around sort of gamifying online interactions and the way that you leverage game dynamics in order to improve educational outcomes. So for any of you who have played like those massively online video games that you talk about, like a World of Warcraft or anything like it, not to get too nerdy on you guys, but if you talk to people who play those games and who engage in Second Life or things like it, what you'll see is they retain a massive amount of knowledge, a massive sort of just data set that is only useful for that game. Why is that? Why is it so compelling? It's actually very fundamental tenets of human nature, like the fact that we like getting constant feedback. We like feeling like we're building something that is more important than just the individual actions. So being cognizant of that and actually incorporating that into the way that people learn, these things that gamers and human psychologists have known very clearly for a long time, but just haven't funneled into the rest of society, I think are going to have really profound impacts on the way that we learn as people. The other thing that I think is going to be really impactful is the removal of the need to be in a certain physical location. And so what we're going to see over the next 10 years, and to a certain extent over the next 5 years, is a mass realization that you can have a phenomenal educational experience without necessarily being in one certain spot. That doesn't mean there is an immense power in being around each other right here, right now. Why are we all in the same room? It doesn't mean that the campus experience is going to go away for schools like this. Like, this is really important. But there are going to be additional sort of components and options built onto these offline experiences that allow students to experience, working on a campaign for a semester while they are taking, a certain set of courses, or actually working for a nonprofit in sub-Saharan Africa, but not having to be landlocked to a certain university, being able to travel around and incorporating that offline interaction, that real-world engagement, into your online learning in a way that actually makes it even more powerful for that subsection of your undergraduate experience. And I think that's also going to pretty fundamentally change how people think about what is an undergraduate experience and how do how do you make the most of it if your goal is to be prepared for the world and as well developed as you can be as a person?
Yeah, I'm going to root myself in a developing country context, such as India, and I certainly can't see 10 years later what will happen. In fact, I don't even know what will happen in technology 2 years down the line. It changes so fast. The way, the observation at least what I think about technology is that it's never substitutive. It's sort of additive, okay? So radio is still around, television is still around, landlines are still around, okay? And they will be around. Sometimes what happens is that we get so enamored with the latest of whatever it is, the next iPhone, we forget that perhaps the most powerful thing was the one that we left behind. And television is a great case in point, in my view, because if you go into a village home in India today, you're likely to find a television set. So 750 million people already have access to television. 900 million people now have mobile phones or access to a mobile phone, right? That is, of course, going to be the future. And now it's not going to be even a mobile phone as we know. It'll certainly, maybe 5 years down the line even, it's going to be a less than $50 iPhone capacity phone in people's hands, okay? It's already there. People are already dreaming about that. So clearly the mobile phone is going to be central. The television also is going to be central. I think what is important is how do the two link. And to me, it's hugely surprising that no engineer in India who has actually experienced this reality every day has thought of connecting the two. It boggles my mind. There is a screen already in people's homes. You have a mobile phone in your hand today. You have the ability to download media, okay? Even if you can't do it in your village, you can walk to a city, you can take a bus ride to a city, get the latest on whatever TED Talk you want in your own language, and bring it back and watch it on your television set for the entire family to see. This is a student engineering project, right? These are the kinds of solutions that will have to come up. What is the real combination? So the way we have thought about technology always, and I hope this continues possibly later, is to actually see what technology is already in people's lives, combine them, leverage them, and not worry about what's going to be the latest later.
Okay, two things. First, I believe that talking about developing countries, mobile phones are going to be, we all know that there are more mobile than computers or regular phones in developing countries. That is going to be the next mean of education. Right now, it's not very convenient. We have students who study with us through mobile phone. It's not very convenient, but it's doable. It will become more and more common all over the world. So mobile is the next thing. The screen might be bigger. It will look different, but that's the next thing. But I think that overall, what technology makes to higher education is that, and when you look at what's going right now in higher education, between the online universities, for-profit and non-for-profit like ourselves, other offering for higher education, and the MOOC, which basically offer courses for people around the world. I believe that the next thing is that the online is going to replace at least a year of college or maybe more. So I believe that the next thing would be universities will come to the student and say, take the first year online, you don't pay for it. You save actually the cost of 1/4 of your higher education, or almost, maybe some cost will be involved, and you start the second year with us. You save the year of cost. The university actually can take more students. As we know, one of the problems of universities worldwide and definitely in the States is that the demand for the good universities far exceed the supply. So they can take the extra students, they can keep with the same students, the same revenue model, but many more students because the students will take 1 year, maybe later 2 years, maybe even more, online, have less campus experience, but still significant campus experience, but save dramatically a lot of money. By the way, talking about the prices of higher education, this is probably the next way to reduce it.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've got gamification, we've got location independence, the mobile revolution, and the two-screen idea, which I think that's a freebie that you tossed out, right? You want the students to pick up on this. But I just want to pick up on what both Shai and Jeremy are talking about, because I think it potentially affects every one of you in this room as you start to think about how you construct your own undergraduate experience, which is what is the proper blend, right, between experiential education, online education. Can you combine those two and have your own path through the institution? I think these are all ingredients that, in your own lives you might be thinking about combining, as well as in your commitments. But it's getting to Q&A time, which is great, and we're going to have two people, I think, going through with microphones through the audience. Please fire away. Okay. So you, and then you, and you. Yeah. Yeah, right here, right here. Yeah.
Hi, my name is David Golan. I'm from Cornell University. This question is for Jeremy. I went through a similar experience as you in middle school. Less than 50% of the people graduated, and I went to a magnet high school. And I kept in touch with those people, and it's a stark contrast of the opportunities that they're aware of. My main question was, how do you motivate those students to take advantage of resources like Khan Academy or MITx, all these free online platforms that you can go to the public library and use when they probably have a host of other issues they have to deal with at home, whether that be drug abuse or gang-related violence? And so that's my main question.
So it's a great question and a really important one. If your goal is, as an individual, as a company, to make the biggest impact that you can, then it's very difficult to shift people's interests. What I think it's simpler to do from an impact standpoint is to create access to people who are driven and who are looking for those resources and to find them. In general, there's a lot that's going to be done around improving educational outcomes over the next 5 years. But one thing we don't have a good answer for is teaching people to learn when they don't want to learn. Like, it's very, very difficult. And so there are policies that can be put in place. There are ways to encourage sort of better training or sort of better experiences for parents so they're better prepared to support their children and to help spark that interest. But from a pure impact standpoint, focusing on really trying to help the students who want to learn is an area where I think immediate differences can be made by finding those students, reaching out to them, and helping them see that there is a path for them. It's not to say that the other problem isn't really important. It's just it's a different problem. Does that make sense?
I mean, I think maybe another way of putting that is that you can segment the problem into a place where the market can make an impact, which is in helping that motivated student. And then there's a market failure, which is really a social innovation problem, which is motivation.
That's exactly right. And it's a much broader societal problem that extends beyond education, that we in the education world can try to impact, but ultimately it requires a lot of different shifts in society overall to change some of these massive problems that impact education directly, but they can't be changed solely by education or even access to it.
There's no app for that.
Maybe in the future moving to digital age and technology age, we're all moving to how can we make it easier and accessible. But the things that work is that interaction between the professor and the student. So that's what we do. And then my question to Jeremy is that my commitment is living with the issues in these urban areas and trying to get these kids that pretty much society forgot about, the kids who quote unquote don't want to learn because they don't even know that they want to because they've been forced as with society to not want to learn to go off and do other things. But how do you actually impact the kids who are problematic? How do you reach those kids? And because those are the kids who I feel are the future, the kids that society pretty much forgot about. Because if we start thinking about those kids, because I pretty much work with these kids, a lot of them, because I'm from that neighborhood. I was that 1% that came out of my neighborhood to Washington University. But then me going back and talking to these kids, they're looking at me like, how did you do it? And I'm like, well, this is how I did it. But then they say, you did I can. So that's a question I got to do.
Big.
Well, the amount of questions you put there, it's probably for 4 hours of. I'll try my part to be short, relatively. First of all, online learning is not for everyone, and some people cannot do it. Moreover, some discipline cannot. It's not relevant for some discipline. Saying that, when you study in any university, 1/3 to 1/4 of your studies are general studies. You can study them online. So maybe not everything, but part of it. And that leads me, and moreover, there are technologies today for many disabilities that can overcome or they can use the internet. Not everyone. So as I said, the internet is not necessarily the answer for everyone. But I don't look at it from that perspective. I look at, let me give you one figure. UNESCO stated that in 2025, assuming that the growth of the world population will be the same, and assuming that the opening of new universities will be the same, 100 million people, again, 100 million people will be deprived from higher education. So I'm looking at these people, and I'm saying that the internet is the solution for them. It might not be the best solution. It might be much harder. It might be not as effective for some of them. Well, for those people, it's the alternative to no other alternative. And that's how I look at it.
Thank you. It's ironic. Your first question actually is somewhat relevant also to me. So really quickly on that one, then I'll dive into the second. One of the things that, the irony is that as a company, what we actually do is address the exact issue that you brought up in terms of the disparity in quality that historically has existed with online education. You're exactly right to focus on classroom instruction. It has historically been so much better. But that interaction that you also correctly point at as something that's critically important, like think about, really quick show of hands, of those of you in the room, what do you think that more than 25% of your education and the outcome of your education, like the quality you've gotten thus far, has come from the other students in your university? Like show of hands quickly if you think it's been at least that much as a function of the students. It certainly was for me. That interaction with other students, with your professors, critically important if your goal is the highest possible level of quality. The thing is, you actually can do some of that online now. You can actually have a live class with 10 other students where you actually raise your hand the way you would in a typical classroom. You can engage with people in that same format, and that's something that I think is going to have a profound impact on institutions even at the highest level of quality. And so that's one area where I wouldn't be too convinced that the internet is the issue there, but the interaction is you're exactly right, it's critically important. And your second question, what do you do? If you want to impact someone's life in that way, it's going to require people. It's you going back there is the first step, but you finding other people like you, coming together and being able to actually connect with those people, connect with those kids, is the only thing that's going to actually change it. At this point, it's not a policy issue. You can't change it fast enough through anything other than human interaction to make a difference, unless you're talking about future kids. And so if you want to connect and help them, what you need to do is find other people like you that care as much as you do, that have the same connection to the area, come together and find ways to really be a guide and mentor for those kids. Each pick one. If you do that, you can have a profound impact. But unless you aggregate people, unless you bring people together, the changes are not going to be fast enough for kids that are in middle school and high school right now to actually change their lives.
Okay, you had your hand up, yeah? Really, really quickly. We just have a little bit of time left, yeah.
Hi, I have a question for Harvard Tennessee. So first of all, quickly describe the program, the commitment. It is a multi-year training program and a training incubator program in Harvard and China. Both focusing on top-down students for students and young professionals who are highly interested in social innovation, social entrepreneurship in China. And last year we did like a 9-day summer camp at Harvard Technical School. But this year we're interested to both like do the summer camp both in China and Harvard. So we're facing a problem, which is that for the people who were recruited this year, they have to, for some of them in China, they have to travel from China to the States. For people who are now here, like me, if I'm interested in the program, the second part of the program, I have to travel back to China to Beijing, which is very, it's like for a lot of students, it's not affordable. So I'm quite interested to listen from the panelists about your insights, like how to kind of enhance the efficiency of the program. Would be any obstacles we might face when we're thinking of e-learning or using Google Hangout or Skype to integrate the students both from China and the States. So, and feel free to ask questions.
Well, I can try. I would say two things. First of all, in terms of promoting the program so people would know about it, we do nothing. Students find us, and they find us either through the media, because we had quite a lot of media coverage, or through Facebook. We are the second largest university on Facebook after Harvard. We have over 1 million fans on Facebook. It means we are number 2. We should get better. But we still, that's the way. So I can't help you with promoting it. But in terms of interaction, we use, our program is very interactive. Students spend a lot of time online studying. Every time student takes a course, she spends 15 to 20 hours a week collaborating with their peers, but it's not synchronous. It's like a form, the old days of form. Every time you go to the class, you see what everyone said. And so you can interact with students. Students interact with each other. We interact with them. Today you can do it. So you can do it, actually, if you have the technology. Well, that's, I think Jeremy can answer it better than me. In our case, we use Moodle, which is a learning platform, and the students go, we create classes from them. They go into the class. They read all of our material is text-based. They read the material, they read the homework assignment, the reading assignment, the discussion question, and start discussing between themselves the topic of the week under a supervision of instructor, but it's not synchronous. And this is something that you can use as well.
We're totally out of time. It's time for us to talk and discuss in our individual groups, and the panelists are going to be moving amongst you so you can grab their elbows and ask those follow-up questions. But what I would really love for you guys to discuss now is this topic of the trade-off between quality and access, and what's really important to us when we start to think about how to promote access or how to promote education in general. Technology, I think we see, is fading to the background already. It's a set of tools, a set of strategies, but the real question is, I think, as Jeremy laid out in the beginning, is what is our goal? What is the immediate goal, the most needed goal? And I'd like you guys to argue it back and forth. Are we trying to push forward the frontiers of quality in education? Are we trying to expand access? And what does it mean to do both? Where are the trade-offs there? So go to it. We're going to have 15 minutes for discussion. Is that right? 15 minutes for discussion, and then we're going to have quick report backs at your tables.
Does to you. The second point that we haven't talked about language barrier. We think that science, technology, engineering, math, STEM fields, whatever, science, sort of a universal language that everyone can understand. So there's a vehicle to be able to teach other things through that medium that you couldn't otherwise.
Great, fantastic. So vote for blended learning and a vote for STEM. Great.
more serious about these things, so we went to different contexts from which to discuss the use of technology in education. I think in the room, I think most of the talk has been dominated by our particular context here, or the structure of the Western world of education, where technology can be very useful. And we haven't really discussed what education is, what is its content. And we take education as something good without achievement, because education is riddled with these different contexts and investments that are political, that are cultural, that are ethical. And so online education, or using like phone or technology to educate, has made it easy to send education to other people. But what is this education produced? Like, where are the sites of knowledge? Where are we getting these things that we're teaching people? So our table was more like critical and like investing in these as a student and the logical question. So one question was to you, Shai, since you are working with higher education. I'm sure you have students from all over the world, and how do you
including South Sudan.
From South Sudan. So the question then is this: from my experience, I run a non-profit Catholic schools, and we're teaching kids in rural South Sudan, and what we're learning is that students are getting A's, performing well, but what they're learning does not correspond to their experience, to their culture, to their world. And so I guess my question is, or our question, how do you bridge that gap, or that disparity between the knowledge that technology is providing to people all around the world, different, or regardless of their different contexts, and their actual experience? How do we make sure that our education is not becoming another tool of imperialism? Because it is that, in a way. So that's the question. I don't think there's a really complete answer or one better answer, but it's something to think about and to be aware of.
Thank you. We're going to have a word at the end, but thank you very much for that. Okay, you guys?
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about the interesting conundrum of credentialing and how that looks when you're taking, massive open online courses. And we talked a little bit about, like, is it more important that you know what you know, or is it important that other people know that you know what you say you know? Which is a good question. And I was sharing, I teach at a university, some 400 level courses for undergraduate students, and I think that's a constant conversation I have with them. I say, is it more important for you that you walk away with my class knowing what you needed to know when you came in here, or that I give you an A and you get to walk out with a degree? I want you to have both, but that might not be the value that you have. And I think, as others have said, it always depends on what you want to do with that degree, because I'm hoping that if a surgeon cuts me open, they might have a nice little degree on the wall that says someone vetted them to do that. But there's other places where that might not necessarily be the goal. And so we talked a little bit about that, and also about the interesting conundrum of retention in online courses, because I know as someone who works in academia, metrics has become very important in assessing how well students are being retained. And I think some of the research we just looked at with MOOCs at the moment, it's been like, 93% of students don't end up making it through to a degree, even though it's brand new. And so talking about, if we're going to go to this platform, what things can we put in place to ensure student success, to make sure that when they start, they can finish what they came for, whether it's a degree or the knowledge that they walk away with.
Okay, all really good points. And we're just going to go through our panelists really quickly with a final word to close it off. I'm really impressed with everything, all the thoughts that I've heard here today, and it really does make me think about, the connections and the sort of the tree that goes from data to information to knowledge to wisdom, and hopefully around again. So that's it from me, and each of you, if you have a closing thought or word for the audience, please. And I'll start with you, Bridge.
Okay. Well, my closing thought is we are used to a certain technology world, and we've experienced it here, many of us. And many of us, even in developing countries, are probably privileged to have experienced a similar technology context. I would say my closing thought is walk into an extremely poor community anywhere in the world, including here, and see how they're working with technology first, and see then what are the solutions possible. Often what happens is that we have a hammer and we're looking for a nail. Okay, that could be a problem.
My final comment, and I'll answer you later. My final comment is that all of you have commitments, and the bad part about commitment, any commitment, is that usually it takes a long time and it goes up and down. Don't give up. That's my only comment. Anytime you want to do good to the world, just stick to it and never give up. That's it.
Thanks, guys. And those were fantastic questions. I actually wish we had a chance to speak to them, but really important. We should talk later. I want to talk about that. What I would say, though, we kind of danced around a fun topic at our table. Actually, one of my favorite quotes. It's from Margaret Mead, I think. And it's, never doubt that a small group of determined people can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And the context of it here is that education is something that is inherently social. One of the goals of education is a better functioning society that allows people to participate in ways that reduce violence, reduce conflict, and allow for our world to coexist. And so, to the extent that you want to impact education, focus on bringing people together that care about what it is that you're doing, and leverage that collective interest. Bring people together that actually have the same drive and passion, and start a movement. Because what is this system? What is education if not a movement between people in order to make the world a better place? There are people that share your passions and values. Bring them together. You're in a very unique place right now where you have, 1, the energy, 2, the time, and 3, the ability to leverage social networks online that no one here had when we were in college, at least not until junior year. And so use it. Be very comfortable reaching out, very comfortable having a point of view, and coordinating with people who share that point of view. It could be really fun. You are the first people to really have this chance, and many of you, I'm sure, are already taking advantage of it. But it's going to be a very interesting next few years in the world of education, and you, literally, you could have a really big impact on that. What is this system? What is education if not a movement between people in order to make the world a better place? There are people that share your passions and values. Bring them together. You're in a very unique place right now where you have, 1, the energy, 2, the time, and 3, the ability to leverage social networks online that no one here had when we were in college, at least not until junior year. And so use it. Be very comfortable reaching out, very comfortable having a point of view, and coordinating with people who share that point of view. It could be really fun. You are the first people to really have this chance, and many of you, I'm sure, are already taking advantage of it. But it's going to be a very interesting next few years in the world of education, and you, literally, you could have a really big impact on that.